I was thinking of doing something completely different today. Did you see the last one, Stefan? Because I referred a lot to you because you weren't here, but you asked me the question. I don't see what the narratives and prevention, how they can be combined. And last time I was referring a few times to that. But it's online, so you can, yeah. So today I will talk about something completely different. I will talk about quantitative research and only about figures, and because we've done a lot about qualitative things. And this is especially a tribute to Jan because he introduced it to us. And then a lot of other people who started working with that. I just selected a few of them and wrote et al. Because there are more. But from these ones, I picked some examples and publications that are the basis of my talk. So what I'm going to talk about is the social relations model. I'll briefly explain what it is, how you can do it, and then give the research examples. And it's about doing step-family, adult attachment, and a case study with a clinical family. So first, is there anyone who knows the social relations model? You know it, okay.
It's been a while.
Okay, so, okay, but if you all knew it, then I shouldn't explain it, but now I can just explain it, yeah? So what it is, it's a model developed by Chaire Francqui. It's already in the 80s of the previous century. And the idea is, for instance, if I have a good relationship to Jan, if I go along well with Jan, what does that really mean? To really know how I relate to Jan, you should know how I relate to everyone. Because when I relate well to everyone, it's not very special that I relate well to Jan. On the other hand, if everyone is relating very well to Jan, it's also not very special that we two relate. So what this model really is about is to tackle the interdependent nature of relationships. If I think that Marine is a beautiful woman, does that say anything about us? Maybe everyone says that she's a beautiful woman, or maybe I find every woman beautiful. So it's about my thoughts, my feelings, my behavior in relationships, yeah? And it's really tackling the interdependent nature. And so there are multiple levels in relationships, yeah? And so part of why I find someone beautiful or I relate well to someone is my personality or the personality of the other one, yeah? It's individual. Yeah, part is really individual. Some people are very easy to handle, some people are very difficult, yeah? And so there is a lot of personality in that, yeah? Personality of the one and the other, yeah? Of course, there is some unique adaptation between people, yeah? How I relate to Jan is not only how I relate to everyone and how everyone is relating to Jan, but it's also something unique between the two of us, yeah? And then there is something about a system. Well, now we are a system, we have met several times, so there is something about this group that is different from other groups. Pierre is not here, so the group is different, yeah? What is the group? So there is something about the group also. So these are the three levels: the individual, the relationship, the group, yeah? Or the system. The interesting thing is that there are good statistical tools to handle this model because it's quite a latent variable model, so it's quite complicated, but we have a package in our package that is really easy to handle. Okay, so we did just start with a case study. We have a 14-year-old who is aggressive in the family context, but not in school, not at school. So there's something going on in this family, and this IP, and so this the identified patient, we say, yeah, is relating in an aggressive way to his mother. Yeah. So the thing is now. For instance, we ask, how do you and your mother get annoyed with each other? So the thing is, we ask, how do you and your mother get annoyed, but also how do you and your father get annoyed? How do you and your sibling get annoyed? Yeah? How do this one gets annoyed with the mother? And so we ask all the different ones. Yeah, we call this a round-robin design in which every person answers the same questions about everyone. Yeah? So there is a lot of negativity to the mother. Part is about what we call the actor effect. The actor effect is the consistency of how this person relates to the tree. So the kind of negativity that is similar in all these three relationships. Yeah? So this is the personality of the actor. It might be someone who is very negative. Yeah? The other thing is that the mother might elicit a lot of negativity. Yeah? Some people just elicit in others a lot of negativity, and so that we call the partner effect. How negative is the mother perceived? If everyone perceives the mother as very negative, then it's something about the personality of the mother. Yeah? The other one was something about the personality of the IP. Yeah? And then you have the unique relationship effect. And this is important because the relationship goes from the IP to the mother and is different from the mother to the IP. Yeah? You have 12 different relationships. Yeah? And so there can be reciprocity, but it can also be not. It can be that the IP is very negative towards the mother, whereas the mother is very positive towards IP. Yeah? Or it's... there is a unique adaptation of the IP to the mother, but not the other way around. Yeah? So it's a relationship effect. Is this specific to the relationship? And then the family effect, is this something specific to the family culture? Does this family differ from other families in the way they handle negativity? Yeah. So SRM explains variance, and that's important. It's the variance. So if you have multiple families, we look at, is there variance in the way people relate to the others? Yeah, is there variance in the way, do perceivers differ, do actors differ, do partners differ, do targets differ, are there differences in relationships? So it's about variance. Yeah. So SRM explains variance in every single relationship at 3 different levels, the individual, the dyad, and the family, yeah, and describes it at 4 different sources. So the perceiver or actor, sometimes we call it perceiver, sometimes actor, it's a person's general tendency to think, feel, or behave in a certain way. Yeah. The target partner effect is the consistency in thoughts, feelings, or behavior that one person elicits from another one. Yeah. The relationship effect is the unique adjustment, and the family is more like something culture, socioeconomic can also be, that they're on another socioeconomic level, or religious factor or whatever, a cultural factor that makes this family different from other families, that there is variance in the way that families, the family culture is about. So here again, and so you have in total 21 components. So if you want to estimate a model, you have 21 components. On the 3 different levels, you have 8 individuals, so everyone has an actor and a partner effect. And then you have 12 dyadic, because what I said before, they're not the same, so they in different directions are different components, and then 1 overall family. We're talking about variances. That is what generally we estimate with this model, and each variance estimates measure deviations around a mean effect. So you have different families, for instance, or different systems, and you see whether there is a variance. Yeah. And that gives information on why there are differences in families. Why is this relationship different from the other? Of why does this person behave differently from the other? This is in the original model in the 80s. It started with estimating variance. Today, there's also the opportunity to estimate the means. And then you look within a family, for instance, all the target effects or all the actor effects, and then you see whether some actor effects are bigger than the other. I'll give you an example of that. And you see this is more recent that people are doing that. It's only like 10 years that we also start estimating means. So it's more the average level. I give you an example of that in one of the researches, the things that we did. So that's the what, yeah? So it's really studying interdependence and then seeing on different levels why people behave or think or feel in a certain way towards someone else. How we do that? I talked about round-robin design, so the easiest way to do that, but I mean on a model level, but not in practice, is that you have 4 people and that you ask everyone about everyone. Yeah, that's a round-robin design. Everyone is why is it the easiest way? Because if you have 4 people, then you can also estimate the family or the system variance. And if not, you cannot do that because then it's contaminated with the error. Because I'll show you the model, you always have error, of course, left. You cannot explain the total variance. And so if you don't have 4 members, then you cannot, there is no estimation of the family effect, of the systems effect. So round-robin design is, in model-wise, the best thing. It gives you lots of information. If you have triads, I have one example of that where you have, for instance, a stepfather, a biological mother, and a biological son. You have triplets, you have triads. That it's possible, but then you cannot estimate the family effect. Another design, sometimes, for instance, we did quite some studies about empathic accuracy. It's how accurate I am in inferring another person's thoughts. Yeah. How empathic I am, but it's really about accuracy. So if I can accurately infer the thoughts of someone else, maybe I can do that of a lot of people, so it's really something about me, yeah. But maybe someone else is really readable, yeah. People sometimes are open books, so they have there is a target effect, yeah, a partner effect. It's not difficult to read them, or it's very difficult to read them, then they also have a big effect. Yeah. Or it's the unique adjustment of me and this person. Yeah, I can read my partner's thoughts better than Jan's thoughts, for instance, or in this case, it's the other way around. But you're much easier to read, yeah. Again, if we do that, you need like everyone inferring everyone's other thoughts. But that's a lot of research work to do. So what we sometimes do is you videotape someone, and then you ask this person to write down all the unexpressed thoughts and feelings. That's how the design goes. Yeah, you have a video of someone, for instance, telling a recent story, and then afterwards, the person looks at the video and stops the video every time he or she remembers having had an unexpressed thought or feeling and writes it down. Yeah. And then in a round-robin design, you would have the other one doing the same and inferring each other's thoughts and feelings. But in a half-block design, you let a lot of people watch this one tape, yeah, and they give inferences of the unexpressed thoughts and feelings, but not the other way around. You see? So it's also possible to work with the social relations model in half-block designs, but it's different, yeah, but it's possible. So what we then have is like 4 or 5 target tapes that we let see to, let's say, 50 people. So you have 50 people making inferences about 5 targets. And then again, you can see whether there is some consistency in how accurate people are, and there is some consistency in how readable the tapes are, and then there is some adjustment, yeah? So it's also possible in half-block design, which is nice, because also in families, sometimes you only want like children answering things about parents, or the other way around, yeah, and then it's a half-block design. So I don't have any example of half-block designs, but it's possible if you would ever think about doing something like that. There was also something that you can do in diets, and that we call the actor-partner interdependence model. And it's, for instance, if you would say, what's the relationship between physical attractivity and attachment? Yeah? Our couple is someone who is physically attractive, more physically attractive, is he also, it's easier to be attached to or something like that. Yeah? So in a couple, you can have the physical attractivity of both, yeah, and the attachment of both. But then you can also see of the physical attractivity of the first one is also related to the physical attractivity of the other one and the attachment of the two, and then you can have the cross correlations. Yeah, so you can make that also complicated so that you can see whether it's a unique effect of a person or whether it's more a general effect. Yeah. So the idea of this slide is round-robin design is the nicest one in terms of statistics and model estimations, but there are alternatives which make it more feasible if you want to do the research. Another thing about designs, and there I do have a few examples, is you can have one group. For instance, we had step families, and then see whether, if you have 50 step families, whether there is some variance in actor-partner relationship and things like that. Yeah. The same we did with attachment and in families. Yeah, and young children's attachment is very dependent on the parent, but if they grow up in adolescence, attachment is kind of an internal working model, so that's more like a perceiver effect, yeah, an actor effect. And then there is also the unique relationship, yeah, because it's, so you can study that. It's just one group, a group of families, you study adult attachment, or a group of step families, you study whether there is some effect of the step parent, for instance. Yeah, there is some variance that the partner effect of the step parent is bigger than of the biological parent, something like that. Yeah. So that's, I have two examples of that. And then there is a very interesting study that Jan actually did for his PhD, and that's if you have a group like of 50 families, you know the dynamics in that group, you know what the variances are there, and then you have one very specific family. For instance, here it's a clinical family, yeah, with lots of problems. And then you can see whether this family differs from the general tendencies in the normative sample. Yeah. So that I'll give you also an example. It's a case study. And then you can also have group comparisons. For instance, a bunch of families with a child with a disability and a bunch of families with a child without a disability. That's just an example. I don't have any examples here because you might remember that I said in an inaugural talk that I'm anti-categorical, so I don't want to compare families. So that's why we never did such a thing with SRM, but it's possible. Yeah. Okay, here is then the model estimation. So it's a confirmative factor analysis where you see these are the observed variables, and then these are the latent variables, and the latent variables are the actor, the partner, the relationship. So in every diet, yeah, you have all these kind of things. It's not really, well, you can have a look at that. It's very straightforward because every score partly is the partner effect, part is actor effect, part is the relationship effect. So it's quite straightforward if you understand the model, but it's of course complicated to estimate all these latent variables. Yeah. So here you have the equation is that a certain observation is the family effect, and then the actor effect, for the K is for the family idea, and the I is for the rater, and the E is for the person being rated. So you have the actor effect, yeah. You have the partner effect, the relationship effect of those two, the family effect, and then you have this measurement error. Yeah, the one I said is always, of course, part of the variance that you cannot explain neither by the family, actor, partner, or relationship effect. There's something left. Yeah, and in case you only have 3 people, this one, the family, and the measurement error are intertwined, so you cannot separate them from each other. You know? Okay, so this is the equation, yeah, and this is the model here. It's a model for one single diet, and this is the model in the whole family. So it's complicated in terms of analysis, but there is a very easy solution, and that this is an R-based package that Lara Stas, which she is working at, she was working at Ghent University and still is 1 day a week, but she's now at the University of Brussels. And she made a very user-friendly R package based on UCLouvain. It's also something that we developed in Ghent. It's very easy to insert, transform, and analyze data in R. And so if you ever want to do that, you also can contact her. And it's very easy. Not only you get the results, but you also get some description of how you should interpret the results and things like that. So she made it that was part of her PhD. And you can do lots of nice things with that because she constantly builds on this package so that you can, for instance, also get the means and things like that. So this is how it looks like. But this is, of course, not very interesting. But it's very easy. You insert your data, you transform them to how it's necessary. You can put labels, customize the labels and things like that. So, and then it gives you this very nice overview of so if you are ever interested in this, Lara is the person to talk to, and she published it in 2015. And I also have like a manual for, if you want, there's a manual for this package. So if you ever want to use it, I can give it to you. Okay, so we had the what and the how. So let's just go through some examples and what we did with that. The first one is about step families, and I will talk a little bit about qualitative research because this was Charlotte Pilisser who worked with us, and she did a mixed method design, and it's nice to see how the qualitative and the quantitative go together. So I will also, and a lot of things that I presented in my inaugural talk were also part of her work. One of the publications she did on the social relations model was Perceived Mattering in Step Families, and it's published in 2020 in Personal Relationships. And the other ones, like Lonka and Lewis, are also ones in the data analysis department of our faculty. So it's they helped her a lot to do the analysis and was also part of building this R package. Okay, doing step family. So this is clearly a step family. About 10% of the families in Flanders, we can say these are step families. They don't have any shared history, and are the adults are partners but not parents when they start. So the whole thing about step families is becoming a parent and having a shared future, building a shared history. And she did lots of very nice work of how people really do that. Yeah, it's actually they kind of went a few steps back in their development and did things together that you would think they had done before. Like, yeah, it's very nice actually how they did it. But that was her study topic. So it's a very complex context. It's interesting then to see what the family variance is. Yeah, the family component in this SRM it's special to this kind of families. Previous research is really on the effects of the complexity. What does the living in a step family do with people? Yeah, and whereas we will always say, no, we want to do what do people with the step family? How do they handle it? How do they do step family, doing step family was things. So this is not what we want to do, not comparing families, but just looking at how do they do it, yeah. And she did two things. One was on meaning making. How do they interpret what's going on, the children and the parents? How do they give meaning to what they're doing? And the second one, the one that is now the topic of this talk, is patterns of family processes, which was then more the quantitative. On the qualitative, she did a review study and interviews with biological fathers in step families, yeah. And it's often the other way around, yeah. I mean, most of the step families is fathers coming in, yeah, stepfathers, but she did the opposite, yeah. She said, okay, these are the fathers with their children, and then this is the biological fathers, yeah. And then, and this is interesting, is she did the social relations model on mattering and influence. And influence, we will talk again about influence when we do the example of Jan. So these were the two main processes that she wanted to study. Mattering is about I matter to someone else. How much do you feel you matter to your father? Yeah, I make the difference in my father's life. Yeah, I'm making the difference. I'm meaningful for him. Yeah, it's really a very, very nice concept. It's emotional, and it's beyond attachment. It's more than that. Yeah, it's very existential actually. If you wake up one day and you think I'm not making any difference in anybody's life, yeah, that's really very, very. And we saw it also when Jan was also very involved in this research. If some people really have the feeling that they do not matter for their step parent, for instance, or step parents feel that they do not matter for the children, yeah. So that's really a very, that's to get cold if people tell you this one. So perceived mattering, and this was in the triads, yeah. So we had the step parent, the parents, and the adolescent. So this was the father and the son or daughter, and then the stepmother. So 86 step family triads, and then the felt influence. This is about, do you have the feeling that you have some effect on another person, yeah? And like we will see with Jan's study, it's both intentional and unintentional. Intentional influence is things like, if I want something, I know how to do that with my mother, yeah? If I want French fries or an ice cream, I know how to handle my mother, yeah? Unintentional is more, it happens that I do something that makes my mother scared, or makes my mother cry, or makes my mother happy. Maureen?
Was there a reason why they did interviews with the biological fathers and not the adolescent or the step-parent?
Yes, that was really because we had done the interviews already with the others. So this was not part of this PhD project. But we had done interviews before with the others, yeah. So this PhD project was only about the fathers, yeah. But here we had everyone, eh? So in the quantitative study we had everyone. So we had 116 step-family households, so the four of them, where we asked about the influence of people on each other, yeah. And we had positive and negative influence, and intentional and unintentional, yeah. And in Jan's study we had another dimension, the feeling of being influenced, but this one was not here because it's a difficult one. Yeah, on a methodological level, it's very difficult to ask people to respond to. I do have the feeling that someone influences me. Yeah? It's more complicated. So it was not always very valid how we matched it. Theoretically, it makes sense, but in doing research is not always that easy. So, but here it's if I want to, I can make my mother cry. Yeah? If I want to, I can make my mother proud. Yeah? That's intentional and negative and positive, and unintentional, it happens that I do something that makes my mother proud. Yeah? Or it happens that I do something that makes my mother sad. Yeah? And then again, of course, everyone about everyone. The parent also, it happens that I do something that makes my child cry. Yeah? Or that makes my child proud, or that's, yeah. Or if I want something done for my child, I know how to do it. Yeah. So it's very reciprocal. You can ask everything. It's the same question everyone. So that's really also something that you have, a restriction of this kind of research, because you have to ask the same question to everyone. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Overview of the findings. Maybe first the qualitative ones. This is something that I reflected on in my inaugural talk, really this ambivalence about wanting to be a normal family and trying to be normal and doing normal things and ordinary things and things like that, yeah. And then all these differences and respecting all these differences, yeah. You clearly see that they are not all from the same family. Yeah. So that's something that appeared it appears in every kind of family that we study. Yeah. The role ambivalence, the only thing they have in mind is a traditional family. And so what is a family, what is a father? A lot of reflections about what is that, to be a father in such a family, how. Three things came up. The context being like a standard family, yeah, and this I think is even an example I used. They say in the weekends we're just like ordinary families. We drive to the sports club, the youth movement, friends' birthday parties, yeah. But now and then we disconnect to create a bit of space, yeah. So we're the same and we're different. Yeah. Shared family understanding, we had to agree on a plan, yeah. If you have children together, you have to agree on something, an arrangement that laid out how we would deal with this new family, and everyone must feel okay with that plan. Yeah. Just creating the shared, they don't have a shared history, nothing to fall back on, yeah? So they have to create a shared future. And it's always in the little things, yeah? You don't create that by big things, it's just in the day-by-day things. We try to get some history by, like with Santa Claus, doing really silly things together. So that's why I say they go back a few steps in their development, and even with adolescent children, they do silly things with Santa Claus. Yeah, it's to catch up because they don't have this history, yeah? And it's silly, it's laughing, it's having fun, and it's about creating our own family culture. Yeah. Really is about small things. And then the SRM study. I am important to my stepfather, for instance. So what we get here, this you already know. The adolescent is answering about his parent, the step-parent, and the sibling. And then everyone about the step-parent, and then you have these relationships and everything like that. Something that we also see in the attachment study that I will talk about in a moment is it's mainly a perceiver effect and a relationship effect. So these are the two main things. A perceiver effect is a consistency within a person. Yeah, there is a variance. The families differ in the way that individuals have the feeling that they can influence or that they matter. Yeah, that's a perceiver effect, so it's really on the individual level. And then the relationship-specific effect. Yeah, that's this slide. The perceiver effect and the relationship effect are really something important. I remember when I did my PhD on empathic accuracy, but it's a long time ago, of course. And I had done the study with the half-block design and the round-robin design, and we didn't find a perceiver effect in empathic accuracy. And someone asked me, that's very strange, because that would imply that people don't have, that there is not something like an ability to infer other people's thoughts and feelings, that it's all about relationships and about other people eliciting, yeah? So here you do have a perceiver effect. That means that there is something like a personality thing that some people have a better feeling of mattering and influence than others, yeah? So it's important for clinical practice, yeah? That there's something that you can work with. If not, it's all about the others and circumstances and relationships, and it's very difficult to do something with. But, and I think this is the nice thing about SRM, it's not all about personality, yeah? It's not all about the individual. It's also about a unique adaptation between individuals, yeah? And this is the next slide, was larger in step-parent-child relationships than it was in biological parent-child relationships. And so you see that there is, in the step-parent-child relationship, there is more that has to be done, more work that has to be done in the relationship, yeah? There's more variance there, because this is really, they have to catch up. Because here, in the biological, it's more about individuals. That we will see also in the attachment. The working model of an individual is enough, yeah? It's a big deal, yeah? You already have an idea about this kind of relationship. You have it internalized. It's part of you. So this is more, socially prescribed, or it's already there, yeah? So you can rely on your internal working models. Where here, it's more relationship specific, so people have to work more. This was really the biggest conclusion of the doctoral dissertation of Charlotte, that she found that in this kind of, in the step-parents, step-child relationship, there is a lot of variance there and a lot of work to do there, yeah? And it's more like a unique adaptation, where here it's more socially prescribed, yeah? So it's nice that it comes out there.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I was wondering to what extent mattering and self-positive influence are related?
They are. I don't remember how much, I don't know, Jan, whether you remember how much, but they are. They are. Yes.
It's logical. Okay.
Yeah.
And then another question I have, I think in many cases, stepchildren not only have one, but two step-parents in two different units. And the evaluation of it, is it not a natural tendency to compare? And maybe to feel more at ease in one, or with one step-parent than with the other?
Yeah.
Did you do any research?
No, we didn't, because that's a restriction of the model, that you really have to say, this is a system, yeah? It's only the 3 or the 4, dependent on the mattering or the felt influence. And so, yeah, they had to make abstraction of the context, but you're absolutely right. It's far more complex than that, yeah? But I don't know, it would be very difficult, I think, to capture that. Would be very difficult, but it's true. It's true. Jan always says that influence doesn't stop at the borders of the family. It is like that. Yeah, it's far more complex than that, and it's also because the paper I will describe later with Jan is for a clinical public, and there he really says that it's just a tool to use in addition to, of course, like here, the qualitative results and things like that. Yeah, some people really like it because it's about it's about data, it's about models, it's about latent variables and shiny models. Yeah, but of course, it's also yeah. You isolate it from a lot of contextual factors and a lot of complexity that you cannot capture in the model. That's really, really true. That's why I only talk once about quantitative relations. Sure.
I don't know the extent to which this model is also being complexified, because what I mean is that in a family system, I think that not all the relationships are on the same level. So, for example, the couple is a sort of relationship that could also influence the other relationships. You see what I mean? For example, co-parenting could moderate the way that an adolescent is or she is important for the step-parent.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are also moderating effects within.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the answer here is yes, because you can correlate some effects within generations, across generations. I didn't include it in the slides, but it's, for instance, in the R package, it's quite easy to include that. And it absolutely is to calculate. Jan, you did that, the reciprocity between actor effects, for instance, or between relationship effects, or to see how they correlate. So
Because it could be also the same with the sibling relationships. Imagine that in a step family, the step sibling, I don't know if we can say it, but you know, children are in conflict, or on the contrary, they are good friends.
yeah,
And it really probably influence other relationships,
yeah,
co-parenting and so on, because it's really different to be co-parent in a family system where there are many siblings conflicts, or
Yeah.
in a family system which is really smooth.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we will come very close to that in the last example, in Jan's example, but it can be more complicated even than the example I will show you. So the answer is yes, but then it becomes very complicated.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
know, but reality is
it is. It is. So I'm really happy with both of you, because you're both saying that reality is much more complex than this model. Yeah, this model is already complex statistically and model-wise. Yeah, but it is indeed reducing the complexity to a manageable. Absolutely, but yeah, you can really go further. That's what when I said that in the our package here somewhere. Says you can go beyond here, beyond standard SRM analysis. So what I'm talking today is really about standard SRM analysis.
I already computed AP,
Yeah.
but this way is much more complicated and more extended.
Yeah. Yeah, the APM is also very nice, I think, but SRM is indeed, families are very complicated, yeah. So maybe just not to conclude, oh, sorry. Yeah, we talked about this, a lot of contradictory feelings in the step families. Creating meaning is not that easy. This wanting to be a normal family and respecting differences, families have to reinvent their own story. Okay, let's go to the second example, and that's about adult attachment. Here it's a very recent publication of Jan de Meulenaar, is also part of his PhD project, and there you also see Lara Stas is involved in this, and it's published in Family Process. Attachment, you know attachment, all of you. It's at an early stage. It's also when Jan and I had this course together on systemic therapy, we often asked the students this question on their exam. We talked about reciprocity and bidirectional relationships, and then you have attachment theory, saying that the way a parent behaves towards a child will have an influence on the child's mental working model, yeah? So it's really unidirectional. So we asked, how do you reconcile attachment theory with systemic theory, yeah? We loved the question, but I don't know whether the students loved it so much. But anyway, in attachment theory, the initial theory, there was a lot of emphasis on the impact of the parent on the children, yeah? So it's really about an actor effect, yeah? About the parent is, or a partner effect from the child perspective, yeah? But when children become adolescents, then they incorporate a lot of what they experience with their parents as an internal working model. So it's becoming something about their personality. So you actually expect more of a perceiver effect then, yeah, of an actor effect, yeah. And there's still this relationship thing, yeah. So here again, we had the in Charlotte's study on step-parents, the perceiver and the relationship effect. Here is also what we expect, to have a perceiver and a relationship effect, and that's also what we got. Anxiety attachment has two dimensions. There are different ways of measuring attachment, but in this study we had anxiety for being abandoned and avoidance of intimacy being the two dimensions in this. You have this model, I think you know it, yeah. And the aim was also here to unravel the different sources of variance. Is it about the parent, and if an adolescent is anxious about being abandoned by his mother, for instance, is that about the adolescent, is it about the mother, is it about the relationship, or are there families in which people are, where there's a lot of fear of being abandoned, yeah. So here are the components: the perceiver, the level of anxiety to be abandoned, the adolescent experiences in all of her personal relationships is something about this adolescent. A mother target effect would then be the level of anxiety to be abandoned elicited by the mother, experienced by all the others. Yeah. The relationship effect would be the anxiety of being abandoned, the adolescent experience in relation to his or her mother without affecting the relationship to all other family members. And then the family effect, the emotional climate where all family members fear abandonment. And then, of course, the three levels: the individual, the relationship, and the family. But that you know by now. In line with the assumptions, so the hypothesis was that we would find significant perceiver effects because it's about internal working models, and that there were also this unique adjustments between people, so that we also would find relationship effects. And if we would work with small children, but of course then you cannot work with questionnaires, yeah, you cannot. They have to be like 11 or something like that before you can give them an attachment questionnaire. But before, you would more think about actor effects, yeah, about effects of the parents. Yeah. We had 70 well-functioning families, the CBCL score, so it's they were all non-clinical families. The power analysis said that we would have to have more than 63. 63 was like the amount of families we should have to estimate all the effects, so we had enough power. There were all two-parent and two adolescent families, so here you see the SRM is also giving restrictions in another way, yeah, that you need at least 4 people, and if there are more than 4 in a family, you have to restrict to 4 people. Yeah? So if you have like 3 children, then you have to leave 1 out. Huh? Yeah, mostly we choose in terms of age. We say that, for instance, the age of the oldest one, we often say the oldest and the youngest one, and if we have 4, we call them the oldest and the youngest sibling to just give them a name, because if you have to put in your data, you have to have number 3 and number 4 are the children, but what child will you say is number 3 and number 4? So we mostly say the youngest and the oldest, and then we say age limits. Yeah, so that's how we choose. But it's another complication of doing this quantitative research, yeah, because you cannot include if they have 6 children, you cannot include all of them. Yeah, so you have to choose 2. So here also we did. So this were the number of children raised from 2, of course, because to 4, and so then if they had 3 or 4, we have to select Age of the older children was between 12 and 18, and the age of the younger between 11 and 17. So that means that some of the youngest ones were really as old as some of the oldest, and it doesn't really matter because, yeah, you can also randomly say this is child 1 and child 2. Yeah, there's just 2 children. Yeah. We had an adapted version of the experiences in close relationships. Why adapted? Because this is an instrument that you can use in, it's often used in couple relationships. But if you have this round-robin design, you have to adapt it that everyone can answer all the questions to everyone, yeah? About everyone is better, yeah. There are 18 items of avoidance of intimacy and 18 items of anxiety of being abandoned, and always on a 7-point scale. So we kept the items, but we changed the way we asked them so that they could answer towards everyone.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Do you counterbalance the order of presentation of the question?
Yes.
Not all adolescents start with the mother and then the father.
Like this.
Because there is a repetition in the questionnaires.
Yes.
You could have a sort of bias.
Yeah. That's
For
true.
example, you lose your attention to the items because it's really repetitive, and in the third time you complete the same questionnaire with some slight changes.
I can see your point. I don't know, actually. Do you know, Jan?
Yeah, we did it.
We did it. Okay. Oof. Yes, but it's true, because if... and for some people, it's really strange that they have to answer it like 4 or 5 times. Yeah. No, 4 times. 3 times, sorry. But...
I'm sorry.
No, go.
Do you present the questionnaire towards the mother, towards the father, for example, and towards the third person, the sibling? Or can you imagine to have the item in a general formulation and 3 columns?
Yeah, we did that, I think. We did that with the 3 columns. Yeah? Yeah.
Maybe less boring.
Yeah. We did that with the 3 columns. I remember that.
One question and then 3 persons.
Yeah.
That raises another concern.
Because they compare, yeah.
Because that raises the comparison. And
Yeah.
so within the method, I think that you can really induce
Variants.
more easily comparisons if you use 3 columns rather than a repetition.
Yeah. It's really true. And I remember that we had this discussion. And then for your study, we did it in columns. I don't know whether we did it all the time in columns. I don't know. Maybe that's an interesting thing to look at, whether we find different results if we present the questionnaires in different ways, because...
We obtained different results in a study where we considered parental differential treatment. So they were only 2 columns, for the mother and then parenting practices, and so they just answered. But it was different when we used the columns than when we used 2.
And did you find more differences in the columns? Yeah.
Because that raises the comparison between the 2. The other solution was to propose the 2 questionnaires in a randomly order for each subject, but with other questionnaires in between. So for the mother and then other questionnaires, and then for the father or the reverse.
Yeah.
And that was less
Different.
There was less contrast.
Yeah. It sounds logical, yeah.
We can also imagine that if you ask them by column like that, it means that always they have to think, okay, to my mother now, and now to my father. So maybe also in the way to think about the behavior, about the way you think about your mother, about intimacy or being abandoned, it's maybe more difficult if you have always to switch from one person to another one, than having one part focusing on
Mother.
question about my mother, then question about my father, and then
Yeah.
the father, and
The sibling. Yeah, that's true.
probably there are
That's true. But I remember very well that we had this discussion, that we also, but I don't think we ever studied really whether the way of presenting the questionnaire influences the results. But I would think yes. I think that there is a difference, yeah.
There is a change that one method increases a particular effect.
Uh-huh.
Personality throughout when you have successive questionnaire, or contrast between relationships when you have the three columns.
Yeah.
And so it could be really a bias in the results.
Absolutely.
Increasing some of the effects in the model, some of the variance in the model.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And how it goes, whether it goes, it's more difficult or it's more obvious, the differences are more obvious, that it can go either way, yeah, but it will impact.
I've already read publications on that, and it's never reported, or not always reported, how they performed, or they collected data, and for me it's really important because it has a great impact, it could have a great impact on the effects which are measured.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree.
But it was in line with family therapy. And in family therapy, you discuss one thing and then you ask it all people.
Yeah.
And then that was important.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the reason why we choose for the columns, yeah. Yeah, but I agree that it's a good reason why, but you can all come up with other reasons to have it different. And the thing is that we should reflect on how this impacts the results. And I do think that here the variance will be bigger because you stress the differences between the three.
That is the variance in the relationships.
Yeah. So that's why, maybe why, because this here we found a lot of relationship effects. So that's maybe why. Yeah, nice.
And it would be nice to replicate just the same study with the other method.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you find the same relationship effect, then you can be confident that
Yeah.
there is a true
Absolutely.
relationship effect. But if this one is decreasing, then you can probably attribute
Absolutely.
to the method.
Absolutely. The only thing is that to find 70 more four-member families is another 2 years because they have a lot of. Of course, if we would only ask this, because you typically ask a lot of other things to these families also, then it would be.
You would also have a method which is counterbalance. Half the sample receiving the first method and
Yeah.
the sample the second, and just have a look, check the correlations
Yeah.
between the three questionnaires when they are presented
Yeah.
in this way or in this way.
Yeah.
And if you have just the same range of correlation, then you can be.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a very nice idea. It's a very nice idea. Yeah, and I really remember that we were discussing that. Yeah, and that. Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Okay, so we had the round-robin design, the 12 family relationships. Cronbach's alpha was okay. The descriptive results, there is variation between families in the quality of attachment. So if you see the means, I think here, anxiety was very low. Attachment is on a 7-point scale. So avoidance was a bit higher, which is for adolescents okay, because they are in this developmental phase where they have to spread their wings. So that's I think what was here, the risk variation, and adolescents experience little anxiety and report significantly more avoidance. Then we had the SRM model fit. For avoidance, there was no problem. For anxiety, the initial model did not fit. And then you can start, what you also suggested, to the intergenerational similarities and things like that, because if you have this model fit where you don't allow actor and partner variance and relationship variances to correlate, that's of course a very restrictive model, yeah, because in reality this will all correlate, yeah. So adding intergenerational similarities is something that is documented before, but still didn't work. And then we also had to allow correlations between some relationships effects. So exactly what you say. Yeah. And that resulted in an adequate model fit. Here is a model fit. I will talk about the means later, but here is the variance. It's only family perceiver and target, and the relationship starts here, but I didn't really put it all the way. But here you see there is no target variance in the variance. There is no target variance. Perceiver, there is in anxiety and avoidance, and also this family effect. Yeah. And then the relationship I didn't include, but there were lots and lots of relationship effects. Yeah. So this is a significant variance between, means that there is variation between families in how people relate, are anxious or avoidant to the others. Yeah. The mean, if you see the means, so you have 4 means here and the perceivers, and if you add them, you have 0. So it's within the family. From all the perceiver effects, you see that there is a negative perceiver effect on the older sibling, and then there is almost nothing for the younger and the sibling and the mother, and there is something for the father. So the father is more than average in the family, the variance, and anxiety, and the older sibling less than average within the family. Yeah, so these are these means. And remember that we only started like 10 years ago to also calculate the means. The variances is really what the SRM is about. So the significant family variance. Families differ in the amount of attachment, anxiety, and avoidance experienced by the family as a whole, so there is difference. Perceiver variance, all significant. All family members differ in how anxious or avoidant they are in general. So it's really something about internal working models of people. Yeah. The larger the perceiver variance, the more people in that role differ from family to family. And so the more there is really something about this individual. There's no significant partner variance or target variance. Differences are not determined by the other person's general tendency to elicit attachment, what you would expect with small children, but no longer with adolescents. And there is some significant relationship effects. Family members show unique adjustment to other family members in their attachment. Remember that we also had the attachment between siblings and between parents. Yeah. Okay. And then the means, the older siblings experience least anxiety in relationships with all family members. And the largest mean relationship effects are situated in the so-called within generational relationships. Yeah. So there are ways of also capturing a bit of this complexity. Yeah. Okay, yeah, Marine?
Does that kind of contradict attachment theory, that the attachment is more determined by a child's personality and not the parents?
No, because attachment theory says that it becomes an internal working model. So in the beginning, it's really about how you experience people, but then it becomes a working model, a blueprint of how you look at the world. Yeah. So that's, and this blueprint can change. For instance, you have a safe attachment, you are a secure attachment, but then you get raped, for instance. So then, of course, there would be a large actor effect, yeah, and then, but normally this is like, they say that it's like, yeah, something rather stable during your life. That's what the theory says, yeah. Okay, the last example is that from Jan's work on family assessment, and that was in 2010, Journal of Family Therapy. So like I said, it's more like a therapeutic. The audience for this research were therapists. So when I reread this, I say how cautious we are in introducing this method, because all of this family therapists would say, oh, it's far more complex, and how is data even contributing to this complexity and things like that. So you really feel this in the way you introduce it, and it's true, because the questions here are also...
But you can never understand the family.
Maybe just what I will say next week. Yeah. You can never understand the family. Let's get a drink. That's true. But so what we intended to do here is to use SRM to family assessment, so a way of thinking about family dynamics and its usefulness for therapy and for assessment and therapy. There were at that time only 2 studies on the topic, and what we incorporated was the sense of influence. Yeah, the same as Charlotte did. She did mattering and sense of influence. Here it's only sense of influence. But it was a bit more complicated than in Charlotte's work. This is one single family, which will I give some context, what that family is all about. And then you compare this family to a normative group or a group of families. Yeah? And you do that by Z-scores. So you know that if the Z-score is more or less, less than -2 or more than 2, yeah, then you have extreme scores. Yeah? And that is something in this family that is different, significantly different from how the average family of your normative group is. So it's kind of nice, because if you have a family with specific dynamics, then you can ask it in a systematic way. And what is especially nice is if you discover, for instance, in a family that there is a lot of things going on between a mother and one child, which is here the case, then you can really see, is it the mother, is it the child, is it the relationship, is it the family? Yeah? And as a family therapist, you then know, should I ask the whole family to come to therapy? Should I work with the mother? Should I work with the child? Should I work in this relationship? Yeah, so it gives you a clue. That was what the intention was, yeah, that it gives you a clue about how to work with it. Okay, that score should be interpreted only for SRM factors with, that's important if there is no significant variance. So if you have, for instance, no actor effect, then it's also not useful to calculate the Z-score. Yeah? So it's only about what's going on in your normative sample, and then you can compare your clinical family with. An example, mother's actor effect has a Z-score more than 2, so this mother experienced a large sense of influence in her family. Yeah? More than the average family, more than the average mother. Or the father-other sibling relationship has a Z-score of -2, that would say the father experienced little sense of influence in his relationship to the older sibling. The normative sample was 52 parent and 2 child families. The ages were equivalent to those in the clinical family, one between 11 and 15 and one between 15 and 19. So we always work with the youngest and the oldest one, like I said. Yeah. This clinical family has a mother of 40, a stepfather of 55, a daughter of 16 and a daughter of 15, and the youngest one is the IP. She has been hospitalized for a year in a child psychiatric center, and her problem is severe aggressive behavior. It's really beating, kicking, fighting, cursing, using obscene language, so it was quite heavy. And towards all family members except the stepfather. There was no physical violence towards the stepfather, but there was a lot of things going on to the mother and the sibling. The diagnosis was oppositional deviant disorder. There was intensive treatment during the year that she was hospitalized, including multidisciplinary assessment, individual and group therapy, family therapy, remedial education, paramedical treatments, and it was all supervised by a child psychiatrist. A bit of context from this family. Both children were born from the mother's marriage with the natural father of the children. When the youngest daughter was 1 year old, The father abandoned his wife and children, broke each contact with them. The children have never been in contact with their father, and his whereabouts was not known. So the father is really out of the picture. Yeah? The mother and the stepfather have been living together for the past 5 years. The stepfather has been divorced for 10 years and has adult children from his marriage. The mother is a housekeeper, the stepfather a retired policeman. Both daughters attended school for technical and vocational training. Before she was hospitalized, the younger daughter was in psychotherapy treatment for almost 2 years. So it's quite a family, yeah. The younger daughter says that she would like the other family members to love her, but that she is always the target of negative criticism. And that is the reason she gets so angry all the time. The mother describes the relationship between her daughters as highly discordant. The mother says she tries to intervene in the conflicts between her daughters and that she always invests effectively in her family relationship but gets nothing in return. The mother does not feel sufficiently supported by the stepfather for her commitment to the family. The mother's life history includes sexual abuse, repudiation by her parents, and hospitalization. When she was 16, she told her mother about the incest of her grandfather, father of the mother, when she was between 6 and 11. Her mother and father did not believe her, but instead blamed her for daring to make such false accusations. Mother ran away from home, became drug dependent, and was hospitalized. So we used this measure of influence, and it was like a 2 by 2 by 2. So intentionality, I already explained. If I want to, I can make my mother cry, for instance, or I can make my partner cry. This intentional versus unintentional, it happens. Then the balance, positive, negative, cry, proud, or happy and sad, or things like that. And then this was a complication that we added, but we never added afterwards. It's influence and being influenced, yeah. I will only talk about influence because the being influenced that's really difficult also to talk about, difficult to answer and difficult to talk about. So that ends up in all these different scales, but we will only do the first 4. Each scale consists of 3 items on 7 points. Here is what you then get, and these are all Z-scores. So if you see, so the blanks are where there was no variance in the normative sample, yeah? And then you cannot calculate the Z-scores, yeah? So for instance, for the family effect, we could only do the intentional positive one because there was no family variance for the unintentional negative and unintentional ones. Yeah. So of course you're limited if you find no variance in a specific normative sample, then you can also not compare. But here you see that in this, and this is of course very interesting, in this particular family, we have a negative Z-score and intentional positive. So this family, in this family, there is the idea that they cannot really have a positive impact on one another, yeah? And it's less than in an average family, yeah? So in a normal family, in a normative family, there is some idea that you can positively influence one another. In this family, it's significantly lower. So this is already a clue for a therapist to work with, yeah? And then you see there in the actor effect, so that's the perceiver effect, there is one, and that is the stepfather. The stepfather does have the idea that he can influence the others, all the others, in a positive way, more than other fathers, yeah? So that's really interesting. And it's also, it nicely fits with the description of the family, yeah? That he is the one, he's the most recent one, and he is the one with some agency, yeah? Partner effects we didn't find, and then there are a lot of relationship effects, and then you see like the mother stepfather, what you say the couple relationship is about. So you see here -2, so here there is in this specific couple, yeah, from the mother to the stepfather, she doesn't have the idea that she can intentionally influence him in a positive way, or her idea about that is extreme low. Yeah. Also, the mother towards the daughter is also another one, and here the younger daughter, older daughter. So, and here the stepfather, older daughter, but then the negative. So you see all this kind of different, extreme scores, like we call them, because there's Z scores above 2 or minus 2. So what did you see? A sense that one can intentionally please another family member is significantly less present in this family. Yeah. So that's a very good clue to work with. Yeah. The stepfather holds strong beliefs about his ability to have an intentional positive influence on the other family members. The older daughter seems to have lost a sense that she can have an intentional positive influence on this family. Yeah. Only in her relationship to her stepfather does the older daughter feel that she can intentionally have a positive influence, and so on and so on. Yeah, I only give a few examples of the results. And to conclude, you can then translate these to some clinical implications and on what the level is that the therapist can work on with this family. Yeah. And it's mainly about the relationship effects and then the family effect, of course, that you can do something with. And the stepfather is clearly a person where you can get something done with, yeah. But he's like the co-therapist in this family because, that's it.
I just want to, I think the idea to compare case study with a normative sample is really appealing, but for me, the question is what do we consider as the normative sample?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, a two-parent family, heterosexual, with 2 children is just like, I don't know if we can say that it's the dominant model or an ideal model of what is doing a family.
Yeah.
And so I think that raises some...
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the point that I made in my inaugural class. Absolutely, I completely agree. The only thing I think here is that these 50 families were lookalikes of this family in terms of the parents and the children and the age of the children. Yeah, that's the only...
Would it be better to fit with child's age or, for example, with other step families?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have another sample with step families.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, maybe that's the influence of the kind of families or the form of families may be more important than the children's age, for example. Or it's a question about how do we match.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
The criteria.
It's actually a nice idea to redo this analysis with the step family sample from Charlotte that I talked about, because at that time this sample didn't exist yet. Eh? But now it does exist.
We can imagine that in a step family, it's much more normal to feel that you are unable to influence your stepchild, for example, than in a normal two-parent, two-child family. Because it's just normal in such families because the bonds are just different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would be a nice idea actually to redo the analysis with the...
But this step family was a special step family because the father already was gone for years, and now the stepfather had the identity of
the father. Yeah.
Also a step family.
It's not really a step family. No, it's a family. Yeah.
Yeah, but that raises just the question, what's the best normative sample to compare?
Yeah.
Because if you take the model of the ID, our ID of what is an ideal family, there is a good chance that you will find some differences.
Yeah. The only way that we can solve that, I think, is to have a huge sample of very different families, just like,
Which represented very
yeah, if we just keep asking them this influence questions, what we do, we could just add up all the families that we study into one pile of 500 families, where you have a huge variation.
That could be a nice project to collect among all researchers who have such kind of data and making a merge with five,
Yeah.
where you can choose subgroups or otherwise consider all the heterogeneity between the families
Yeah.
to make comparison for case studies. Because I completely understand that it's really difficult to collect such kind of data, but I guess that in the world, a lot of researchers
Yeah, absolutely.
do that. And so an effort to gather all the information would be really helpful
Yeah.
for those who are making case studies.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that would be a very good idea. We have in Ghent a project like that. It's the case study archive, where we have really we had money from how do you call it? I will come up with the word. But we got some money to really have all the case studies published case studies, because it's really lacking. Because if you are a therapist and you can, you have data on things and you search for articles on attachment or whatever, but it's always, like we say, less complicated than your case and blah, blah, blah. So case studies are really important, and there's like an archive of all case studies. It's a very, very nice project. I forgot who paid for it, but it's a fund where you can have payment for infrastructure and things like that. Well, I'll come up with the word later. But that would be, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So another thing we could do, yeah.
I'd like to go on the idea of the normative family, but I think it might be even more complex than that, in the sense that the idea of what is a normative family is also fluctuating. It's fluctuating.
Yeah.
It's not
Changing.
And we can say, well, we think this traditional family is the norm, but I think the family itself, and members of the family themselves, will also look at families and say, these are our normative families.
Yeah.
I don't know how this can be included as well, and I think more and more so that now in the digital world again, when you look at when people fix their norms on the basis of what they see on Facebook, and the ideal families that you see on Facebook, or films or whatever, I think it might also have to do with expectations that are unfulfillable. And then you get the experience that this young woman, identified patient, also experienced. Like, we'd like to be a normal family, but if you put the bar so high that you can never get there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's really true. I think a lot of the reviewers must have said that too, eh? No?
Yes, but the family therapist was content that he get that, then he had some sessions with pleasant experiences
Yeah.
between the family members, and this was good.
Yeah. Yeah. It did work out here, yeah. And that's really also what Isabel is saying, that it would be nice if we had like a big group of all kinds of families, but it's also in the idea of a normative sample, yeah. It's a bit the assessment language that you use, like you have a normative sample to test whether a questionnaire is okay, or to see how people relate to it. So that's the same. It's the same question. You also have a normative group of youngsters or adults or people with depression or whatever. So it's the same question. And the larger the group is and the more variance there is within the group, the nicer. So adding up all the existing data is I think, yeah. And what you raised, Stefan, is also, well, it's interesting because the idea is here, how do you give feedback to this family about this, yeah? Well, do you say, well, we compared you to another group of families, what we did? Or do you just say, well, we see that in your family is, there is like a culture of having the idea that it's not easy to have a positive influence on one another. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Have you considered adapting this case study comparison idea to a within family design, where rather than comparing a case study to a group of normative work, other families, you monitor the same family over multiple occasions, and then you can start to say, okay, 6 years down the road, how do they compare to this span of time within first meeting?
Yeah.
Have there been changes?
But you have to, I see the idea and it's nice, but you to estimate the variance, you need more than one family, yeah?
No, you wouldn't. You just conceptualize variance differently. You would have to nest error a little bit differently and play around with some of the parameters. You couldn't just like plug and play. But you can have variance within a family, right?
Yeah.
Because the way they're going to see and interact with one another is not going to be completely stable.
Yeah.
So provided there are fluctuations on these things day to day, you can monitor them over a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
And that there will be day-by-day variation.
Okay.
So you can say, well, compared to that period, within
Yeah.
your normal operating parameters,
Yeah.
is there change?
Yeah. Like you do in therapy also with an A design, for instance, where you can, in between, you do some therapeutic interventions and see whether it works. Yeah, it's a really nice idea, actually.
And with method like elementary movement assessment, you can have something which is really interesting because we assume here that there is a system which is functioning like this in a way, but I guess that there are many fluctuations within the systems,
Yeah.
within the day,
Yeah.
from day to day, and so.
Yeah, like a diary. But then you would have to restrict yourself to like 5 questions or whatever. But
at the moment, do you feel that you are able to influence the other?
Yeah.
Something very short.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be really interesting.
Yeah. An experience sampling methods within family. Yeah, nice. Lots of ideas, Jan. Yeah. I don't know how late it is now. Now we have a few minutes left. Because I'm really curious about the observation of Isabel, because in the in the inaugural talk, she made a comment, and I remember that I found it a very nice comment or a very interesting comment, but we didn't really get into it. So before I give the finissage, I really want to know, to understand the comment. So.
It was, I just want to share a general thoughts, because it was not really, I did not reflect a lot on that, but I remember that in the first presentation, I was wondering if we would be able to be the voice of someone else.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's an important question because it's difficult to depart from your own ground and little stories, and even if you have listened to others, if you try to understand them, to be highly empathic and so
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, it's like when Caucasian women want to be the voice of minorities.
And do you also think like that as an academic? Because if we do research now with families, for instance, with donor-conceived families or adoptive families or whatever, the idea is then that we give them voice. Yeah.
Rather than being the voice.
Okay.
Because I think that we can be the voice of others.
Okay.
Because I'm influenced by my little story and my grand story.
Yeah.
And even if I make an effort to be in the other perspective, I'm still what I am. And my voice is just my voice.
So if we say let's give voice to the lions, then we would agree. Yeah. Instead of let's be the voice of the lions. Yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
Always what you think, that's ideal.
Yeah.
You know, about freedom. If you are a Caucasian
Yeah.
girl, then you think about freedom, importance of your own values,
Yeah.
and it's really difficult to
Yeah.
avoid to consider that. And so you will say that, okay, these minorities should have much more freedom.
Yeah.
But maybe that it's not their voice.
Yeah, I understand completely, and you're absolutely right. Yeah. Let's give voice to the lions. I will end like this.
And even with, it's in line with a comment of Pierre about the method in the second session, I think.
Yeah.
Because doing qualitative study
Mm-hmm.
is a kind of much more close to their voice,
Mm-hmm.
of course. But each time you interpret the findings, or being more attentive to such kind of part of their discourse or narratives and so on, it's your
Mm-hmm.
voice. And so a qualitative approach is one way
Mm-hmm.
to approach that, but you can never be their voice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I understand it very well. Let's give voice to the lions. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's really true also. But it's puzzling because I remember all these sentences. For instance, maybe on adoption, that's something that triggers me very much because I was thinking I have two adopted sons, yeah? And they often say to me, you cannot talk about racism and you cannot talk about, because it's their voice and like, you don't understand. And even we say that, not so long ago we said that to a few men, you don't understand what it is to be in a meeting with two women and a lot of men if you are not a woman, yeah? You don't understand. That's exactly the same that we don't understand what racism is if we are just white Caucasian. But so in a focus group, for instance, on adoption, something that struck me a lot was one woman said, people expect you to be grateful about this adoption. And it's like that you are in your car on the highway, and every time you come home, you say, oh, thanks God I hadn't a car accident. I mean, nobody says that, yeah? Nobody said, I'm so grateful that I didn't have a car accident. And say, that's exactly how it feels if people expect us, being adopted, to be grateful to our parents and society that we are rescued, yeah? And I can really understand that, I think, that feeling, and it helps me handling my boys. So there, I understand what you mean, but there is, do we give voice, or can I also be the voice of that woman?